Football Friday edition of Get Up, which starts right now from the Seaport. Delighted you have chosen to get up with us. Graziano's got all kinds of news this morning. Sacho's ready to go. Nico, we could have used you last night with the Jets. So someone's got to stop the run. And Ryan Clark is here. He's going to hit somebody over the next 2 hours, that's for sure. And even I may, as we begin with last night's game of the night, the Jets and the Colts on Thursday Night Football, and America's sensation, Mike White. It was a great 4 days. Second possession for the Jets, Sacho. This ruined my night.
Yeah, not only your night, the night for a ton of Jets fans. Seeing this injury was hopelessness for the Jets.
Mike White there, that's DeForest Buckner, whose arm he hit. White would stay in the game, and 6 plays later, he finds the rookie Elijah Moore for a wide-open 19-yard touchdown. We're tied at 7, but White would then go to the medical tent. He's got the grimacing with the sideline. He would not come back in the ballgame. Meanwhile, Minko, we wanted to see Carson Wentz play well, and we did.
Little shovel pass here for the touchdown. Wentz got to carry this momentum forward after a big win.
That's Jack Doyle who gets one there, and then this one right before the half. They're going to call it a touchdown. Sacho, is it a good call?
Yeah, it's a great call. Possession, 2 feet down, football move, touchdown.
Michael Pittman Jr. had the big week last week, and there you see it. 1-2, boom, before Marcus May pokes it out. Colts up 28-10 at the half. Then third quarter, they're piling on as Mike White would not return. There's nothing, Ninko, they love more than the big man touchdown.
A little throwback to the offensive lineman. That gets the team excited. Look at everybody celebrating and cheering on their teammate.
Danny Pinter wearing Jeff Saturday's old number, and then Sacho, they just ran it all night long.
Yeah, they did 260 rushing yards, and this is in the third quarter, so it was a dominant performance. The Indianapolis Colts had their way with the entire Jets defense.
Jonathan Taylor's 78-yard touchdown. Jets would tack on some meaningless scores late. 45-30, the Colts get the win. Frank Reich afterwards on his beleaguered quarterback.
He's been playing a lot of good football this year. He played, had a couple things at the end of the last game. But, he was flawless today. He was stinking flawless.
Well, Dan Orlovsky, who is the president, as you know, of the Carson Wentz fan club, said he wanted to see a boring game out of Wentz, and he answered by completing 70% of his throws, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. This is the third such game in his career and the first in 2.5 years. We'll talk more about that game and some of the implications on both sides later this morning, because we have breaking news as we speak today. Dan Graziano, the very latest on Odell Beckham Jr.
Odell Beckham Jr. and the Cleveland Browns have been negotiating this week to adjust his contract to get it to the point where the Browns feel comfortable releasing him. And the reason there has to be an adjustment is there's about $8 million left on Odell's contract, and if he's released, he has to go through waivers since we're after the trade deadline. And if he clears waivers, no one claims him, the Browns are responsible for all that money, and they would like to be responsible for less of it. So they're trying to get the contract to the point that if he clears waivers, their financial hit won't be as significant. The reason it's a tricky negotiation is Odell Beckham and his agent don't want the contract to get so team favorable that then someone will claim him.
Right.
Because they want him to get through waivers so they can pick where they go. So that's the push-pull. It's happening. It's been happening all week. There's more today. It's possible it could get done today, in which case they would release him.
But either way, he would not clear waivers. Let's just make it very clear for the audience until Monday. So he's not playing for anybody this weekend regardless.
No. A player who was waived on Friday doesn't clear waivers until 4 p.m. Eastern time on Monday.
So the soonest, regardless of at what point this thing gets done today, that's the soonest that he could then become a free agent. And oh, by the way, today happens to be Odell Beckham Jr.'s 29th birthday. I don't know if it's a happy one or not based upon the way he feels about all this. Ryan Clark, he's an LSU guy. You've known him for a very long time. What is your perspective on where we stand right now with OBJ?
The situation seems like a little more than actual just football. And I think that could reverberate throughout the locker room. This is something that could affect this team going forward. I think back to when Odell Beckham Jr. was traded from the New York Giants and all the positive things many of his teammates had to say about who he was as a teammate, who he was as a player, who he was as a friend. I feel the exact same way, but it's a little added piece in Cleveland. Jarvis Landry is Odell Beckham Jr.'s best friend. And not like best football friend or, hey, the dude I met in the league who I'm closest to because we have the most in common. But these dudes have been tight since high schools. These dudes were college teammates, college roommates even. And so for now, if anything is fishy in that building, if anything else goes behind choosing Baker Mayfield over Odell Beckham Jr., other than the fact that he was the franchise quarterback and he was the guy that was picked first overall, I believe this could be an issue. And if you talk to people who have been in that locker room or been in that building, this isn't a locker room or a building that feels like Baker Mayfield is always authentic. And I think that's the one thing Odell Beckham Jr. always was. And there's people even on the Cleveland Browns saying that if Odell Beckham is a part of this team, we want him to be. We want him to be welcomed. We will welcome him and he can help us. I think that says a lot about where this locker room is when it comes to the separation of do they side with Odell or do they not.
It's a very interesting way of looking at this. It is, I think, worth pointing out that sometimes the public perception of Odell Beckham and the way the people who know him best, the people who have played with him and all that, those things are very different sometimes. And that just, I guess, is just part of it. Let me play some of that sound, actually. Since RC just mentioned it, Cindy, let's play it. There's a couple of the players in the Browns locker room yesterday talking about whether or not they would like to have Odell Beckham back.
Just something that's we've been dealing with. Hopefully we can get him back if that's possible. That's just my opinion on it. And if not, we just got to carry on. We got a big game coming up. I feel like the majority of this locker room would love to have him in this building, flat out.
We don't know what's really going on. We probably know as much as you guys know from outside the building. But, if he wants to come back and be part of the team, I'm sure we'd welcome with open arms.
Boy, that middle one was interesting, wasn't it? Boy, I feel like the majority of this locker room would love to have him back. But the ship has sailed, right? I mean, we can talk about this in the past tense now, right? Reasonably speaking.
Right. And look, it's important to note here that this is not one-sided. I mean, obviously he doesn't want to be there either. So, but this lines up. My experience covered him since he was a rookie with the Giants. Teammates have always liked him. He had issues with the coaching staff in New York, which is why he got traded. But, RC's point is a good one.
And so, Sacho, you made a very interesting remark to me right before we came on the air about when we are looking to assign blame and all the rest of that.
Yeah, well, and when you're looking to assign blame, Odell's not the problem, but also Baker's not the solution. Look at the stats for this year's team. 6 touchdowns for Baker, 3 interceptions. All the missed opportunities that Odell was wide open, and then he didn't get the ball. And then also you go to the style of offense that this Cleveland Browns team plays. They want to run the ball first, obviously. They're a timing style of offense, and so that's not very suitable for not only 1 but 2 star receivers.
And Nico, before we get to where he may wind up, just the fit, it just never seemed to work here when you see it. You've been critical, or at least you have questioned Baker Mayfield for as long as you've been coming on this program, and that maybe is a big part of this puzzle here.
He has the ability to throw the football, which is key as a quarterback, but this has a Bill Belichick storyline written all over it, doesn't it? Go out, go get OBJ, bring him to a team in need of a number 1 receiver. That's the one thing they're missing is a true number 1. If they added a true number 1, that opens up everybody else.
And so that's something we're going to get into a little bit later in the hour is where might he wind up. Again, Monday is when he would clear waivers if this goes the way we expect it to. And if he does, then he becomes a free agent. But RC, I think at some point in the conversation, it's appropriate for me to mention that, by the way, they're playing Cincinnati this week in an enormously important game in the AFC North. We cannot talk about the Browns like they're out of it. While they've been disappointing, they're right in the thick of the race in the AFC. So what impact do you expect all of this to have on their chances of winning a monster game on Sunday?
Well, I think it depends on what impact you think his injury had last year. Many people think that Baker Mayfield ascended or played a ton better without Odell Beckham Jr., that this offense ran more smoothly. And maybe that's the case. Or maybe we are correct in that there's going to be some chemistry loss. There's going to be a little bit of issues or some energy that's off because Odell Beckham's departure isn't one of those things that it's at the surface level as we see it. But if you're the Cleveland Browns, you know who you are. You aren't Baker Mayfield's team. You're a football team that runs the football. You're a football team that rushes the passer. And those are the 2 things that they have to do this week if they want to contend or beat the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals aren't necessarily the team we watched play against the Baltimore Ravens. They could also be the team we saw lose last week to the New York Jets. So the Cleveland Browns focus is forget Odell Beckham Jr. Let that be business, but make sure you go out and handle your football business on the grass against Cincy.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. Right to it. How do you see this game?
I see the Cleveland Browns winning this game. Almost Darcy's point, right? Like, Cleveland is built on running the ball. And last week we saw a Cincinnati Bengals football team that got beat by the Jets. And mind you, the Jets played well, but Cincinnati did not look good, even forcing 2 turnovers early. And so I see Cleveland going back to their initial game plan, which is we want to be a ground and pound football team, want to rely on our defense. We're not going to go, almost like Orlovsky says, right? Mm-hmm. Just play a clean game of football. And that's their style. That's how they're going to win. And I think they will win.
Well, they ran into the future Hall of Famer that was Mike White for at least those 4 days, but that's a whole separate conversation. Nico, how do you see this impacting the team? They got to be ready to play a huge game on Sunday.
We were talking about this before the show. Sometimes when things like this happen, as a player, you're just like, whatever. Just, okay, if he's not here, we got to focus on what we can do as a team. It's not going to help us moving forward. It's not going to help us against the Bengals. So in this situation, the team's got to focus on what they have to do to play a football game in a division game that's very important.
And it's almost like an injury. Like, we see the situation in the media, and it's
Same
like, okay,
thing.
well, it's not. But in a football, when you're on a football team and a guy gets injured or a guy's not available, you move on, no matter who that player is. Even if it's your star player. We saw it with the Cowboys last week with Cooper Rush and Dak Prescott not being available. You just move on. As sad as it is to say, the ship set sail. I remember when I broke my leg in 2013, it was like, sorry, guys, they moved on. It's bad luck for me, but that's the nature of the NFL.
And so the reality, Graziano, is this is a team that some people